greediest fighting game of all time just turned into a very generous package indeed. This is Street Fighter V Champion Edition. Street Fighter V holds the record of being the game I've tried to review the most times but failed every single time. I absolutely love this game, but every time I sat down to write my review, about 75% of the text ended up going on and on about how disgustingly greedy this game was. But if the old Street Fighter V was all about ignoring to attract new players and all about grabbing every last cent from the few loyal players Capcom still had playing the game, the 2020 version of Street Fighter called Champion Edition is a generous and tasteful box of candy. With 40 fighters, more than 25 stages and hundreds of costumes, and all of this at a low price, you'll get enough content to last a very long time. I've spent more than double the time in this game than in any other fighting game I've ever played, because the gameplay in this game is a wonder. Nothing is like the thrill of a really tight grudge match, and Street Fighter V has that excitement in spades. As a player that sucks at fighting games, I'm glad to say that Street Fighter V is the most beginner-friendly 2D fighting game I have ever played as far as the core gameplay goes. It's easy to make cool stuff happen, and it's a breeze to just keep on playing and enjoying this world once you have settled in it. But even though the gameplay goes out of its way to be beginner-friendly, the game is still schizophrenic when it comes to welcoming new players. The tutorial is a complete joke and will teach you absolutely nothing of value. There are no character guides that teach you more about the fighters. There is no in-game guide where you can learn more about the core mechanics, or any kind of training camp with exercises where you train different aspects of the game. In addition to all of this, there is also no saving your progression in the arcade mode or the survival mode. ARMS managed to do all of this on its first try, so why can't Street Fighter, a series that has been going on for more than 30 years, achieve it? If you want some specific training, you can always go into the extensive training mode and record what you want the other fighter to do and then train against that bot. But that is not likely something a complete newcomer will do out of the blue. The game would have been much more inviting if it, in addition to this, had offered a list of training exercises you can just choose anti-air training or V-reversal and get right into it in seconds, just like in ARMS. There is a mode for training combos, but the choice of combos that they want you to train makes no sense at all for a newcomer. Like most other fighting games, there is an almost complete lack of beginner-friendly feedback from the game between matches. It's not like in NHL where the game tells you that you did this right, you did this wrong, and you need to work on this to get better. If you as a beginner keep on getting hit by fireballs and that character has an attack that punishes fireballs that you never uses, it would have been nice if the game could tell you that, hey, you have this very useful attack against fireballs that you never uses, why don't you try it out? Even an open-world action-adventure like Breath of the Wild and an online team shooter like Overwatch give you all of these kind of helpful tips on the loading screen, so why can't fighting games of all genres do it? I don't mind watching and analyzing my own matches or watch guides on YouTube, but it would be nice if the game offered some kind of in-game help for a beginner. I guess the top fighting players want to find every kink of the fighting games by themselves, but as a beginner it would have been nice if the game could teach me more about itself like games in other genres do. The core gameplay is not the only reason Street Fighter V is the fighting game I've spent most hours playing in my life. The game has the best cast of characters anywhere in gaming. Street Fighter is no doubt my favorite video game franchise when it comes to its characters, and in this edition almost all of my favorites are present. We get the cat-loving special agent Cammy, the no longer schoolgirl Sakura, the somewhat distracted ninja girl Ibuki, and the snotty upper-class blonde Karin. And my new favorite, the fortune-telling trainee Menat. Not to mention the embarrassingly sexy, electrifying Brazilian Laura. Their designs are great and they are a treat to play as too. The karate girl Makoto is nowhere to be seen unfortunately, but aside from her, Street Fighter V Champion Edition has got all the fighters I wanted to play as. The character stories, one for each character, are short but entertaining, sometimes even hilarious, but the main story mode is incredibly bad. We have grown to expect lousy story modes from fighting games, but this excuse for a story is bad beyond belief. Sometimes when you write a review, you rabble nonsense like a 10-year-old could have written something better than this. But God, a 10-year-old could actually have written something better than this. In fact, it would be hard to find a 10-year-old who could come up with something less interesting with the same world and the same characters. What makes the whole thing even harder to swallow is that some of the Street Fighter anime and the Street Fighter comics from Udon has been absolutely brilliant. So why not hire some of those guys to write the story for you the next game instead of letting the janitor do it on his lunch break? But a fighting game doesn't live and die by the story mode anyway. It's all about the action in the ring, and this is where Street Fighter V really shines. Yes, the game is a much simplified version of Street Fighter 4, but for a hopeless fighting game player like myself who can really make anything spectacular happen in any fighting game, this is just a good thing. Street Fighter V may be less interesting as an esport in comparison to Street Fighter 4 because of its lack of complexity, but as a game it is just more fun to play than any other 2D fighting game I've ever tried. Let's take Cammy as an example. Her quick spin knuckle is executed in Street Fighter 4 by moving the stick forward and doing the half circle backwards motion and pressing a punch button. In Street Fighter V you just press the medium punch button and the medium kick button at the same time. Since this move is done on reaction to punish fireballs, it's a world of different for a beginner not having to do that cumbersome long half circle motion. Her hooligan combination is also simplified, making it much easier to use than in Street Fighter 4. Even though I still love Street Fighter 4, it's these little improvements to the core gameplay that makes me choose Street Fighter 5 almost every time. If you're an experienced fighting gamer, there are tons of other fighting games out there that is more complex and maybe more rewarding after 3,000 hours of play than this one. But for someone that is destined to stay a fighting game beginner forever, Street Fighter V is by far the best choice if you want to play some Street Fighter. If you're an experienced fighting player, you're probably also one of the people that have complained about the netcode in this game, but I've never had any problems playing online. Except that I lose most of my matches, but I'll take a wild guess and say that is not the game's fault. Losing in this game is a pain, but you have to endure losing to get better. So I'll guess I keep on losing for a long time ahead then. Because I'm sure I'm going to play this game for a long time still, at least until Street Fighter 6 finally sets sails and leaves the shore. The good, beginner-friendly gameplay. The best cast of characters in gaming. Lots of fighters, stages and costumes. Nice arcade mode. The character stories are amusing. The bad. Awful main story. Useless tutorial. No in-game guide or training camp. No useful feedback from the game between matches. No saves in arcade or survivor mode. When all is said and done, I give Street Fighter V Champion Edition 9 out of 10. There's a lot of little things I would like to change about this game, but those are all outside of battle. As long as you're actually playing the game, it's absolutely freaking brilliant. It's a shame there's no real tutorial or training camp where you can learn more about how to play and understand the game, but I guess Capcom knows those guys doing fighting game guides on YouTube need some viewers too. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next review.